Whenever there's a totalitarian movement, there is also a youth movement, because the children, they need to be indoctrinated to serve the future state. In Germany, we had the Hayot, the Hitlerjugend. In the Netherlands, there was the National Jeugdstorm, the Jeugdstorm, part of the Dutch Nazi Party, the N.S.B. More about this faction coming up. Hey, good to have you back on the channel. If you're new, my name is Steven, I'm a history teacher from the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, exactly, and I'm hustling history for you. And if you like that, well, consider subscribing. And do not forget to hit the notification bell. So, the Dutch Nazi Party was known as the Dutch Nationaal-Socialistische Movement, the N.S.B, or Nationaal-Socialistische Beweging. It was founded in 1931 by engineer Anton Mussert and his colleague Cornelis van Geelkerken. It didn't see itself as a party, but as a movement. And they also had a paramilitary arm known as the WA, the Weerbaarheidsafdeling, and a youth movement, the Nationale Jeugdstorm, or the Nationale Jeugdstorm. The ideal society in the eyes of the N.S.B. was a cohesive community of the people. The future fascist or National Socialist state would, to a great extent, intervene in the private lives of the people. From childhood, the people had to be indoctrinated by the ideals of the N.S.B. The youth had to relieve the old guard, and with the National Jeugdstorm, they had to get ready for that. The emphasis was on order, discipline, camaraderie, and decisiveness. Its magazine stated, "The Dutch people are not an arbitrary grouping of independent individuals, but an organic whole, in which the individual or a group has to subordinate its own interests to the interests of the whole community and to serve this community according to the degree of the acquired capabilities. Respect for religion, patriotism, comradeship, discipline, order, sacrifice, and a sense of community must be cultivated, developed, and maintained in this popular community." In August 1933, the Nationale Jeugdstorm consisted of 13 national groups, and N.S.B. co-founder Cornelis van Geelkerken became its leader. The Youth Storm was presented as an independent association, free and independent of the N.S.B. itself. Reason for this was to avoid the uniform ban. Speaking of uniforms, the Youth Storm members wore a light blue shirt, a black tie, short trousers or a skirt, and stockings. On their head, they wore a so-called karpoets, a shaggy black hat. On their hat was their symbol, the stormmeeuw or common gull. That was also the name of their magazine that was issued from November 1934, once per 2 weeks. The organization was some kind of boy scouting, but apart from boys, also girls were welcome from the age 12 to 18. They exercised gymnastics, athletics, and other sports. They were taught in history, economy, politics, and other subjects from a fascist point of view. Their activities were summer camps, propaganda meetings, and walking marches. Its organization directed its message to the new generation, as was stated in their magazine. Not the uprooted, the indifferent, but the youth, which the Netherlands is waiting for. Not to the youth that has already been written off, that has grown old with jazz and grey because of the cocktail. No, the call comes to those Dutch youth, those boys and girls who still feel really young, who want to know that they are young people and on that basis join together to be national, youthful, stormer. Despite its propaganda efforts, the National Jeugdstorm never became a mass movement, unlike what happened in Germany, where the Hitlerjugend and the Bund Deutscher Mädel, the League of German Girls, these movements, they grew out to mass movements. But this wasn't the case for the Jeugdstorm. No, mid-1930s they had only 700 members, and most of them were actually the children of N.S.B. members. It all changed. May 1940, because then the Germans invaded the Netherlands and installed their own regime, and they worked with the N.S.B. Eventually, the N.S.B. became the only Dutch political party that was allowed by the German occupier. But the N.S.B. has some deviating goals. I mean, even within the N.S.B. itself, there were members with different ideas. N.S.B leader Anton Mussert wanted the Netherlands to be under National Socialism, albeit as an independent nation, maintaining its own identity and not as a part of a larger Germanic Reich. This in contrary to his colleague, Meinhoud Rost van Tonningen, who wanted to obey to the German demands as much as possible and was more anti-Semitic than Mussert. Regarding the youth storm, Rost van Tonningen arranged that several hundreds of boys and girls from the Jeugdstorm went on a camping trip to Germany alongside the German youth movement.
Finale 75 meter BDM. BDM-werken en Jeugdstorm. Dit nummer werd gewonnen door Fräulein Fischer in 10/13 seconden. De Hitlerjugend demonstreerde een behendigheidsnummer.
This was not a big success, especially not according to the Germans, because they looked down on the Dutch children. They lacked severe discipline. This is very logic, since the Germans were under strict discipline since 1933, but the Netherlands had been a democracy until recently. Some Dutch children adapted to German National Socialism and became fervent Nazis, but for most of them, it had no effect. Basically, the Jeugdstorm continued its course from before the war, and its leaders hoped that it would grow out to a mass movement. But this never happened, although they did increase in members. During the war, they had around 12,000 members. The magazine of the Jeugdstorm, called Storm Mail, stated, "Let's clearly understand what we want. What we strive for as youth of the Netherlands. We want to be happy, healthy, and confident in the future. As the youth of the Netherlands, that means all the youth of the Netherlands." The German occupier had its eye on the movement because they hoped that individual members would fight for them once they would come of age. To achieve this, they wanted to integrate Dutch members in the German Hitler Youth at sports competitions and demonstrations. They wanted to show solidarity between Dutch and Germans. The idea was that Dutch members would volunteer to join in the Waffen-SS to fight on the Eastern Front. As the Allies liberated the south of the Netherlands in 1944, 2 Jeugdstorm battalions became part of the division Hitlerjugend. Others, they fought in Landstorm Nederland and fought against the Allies, the Western Allies, once they liberated the Netherlands. But do understand here that because of the lack of training and discipline, these were last-ditch troops that were far from effective in the field. And if you want to know more about the Landstorm Nederland, you click right here. And if you want to learn more about the N.S.B in its pre-war years, you can click right here. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to subscribe. En tot de volgende keer, maar weer.